The complete works of Swami Vivekananda, Jnana Yoga, Chapter 5, Maya and Freedom, Part 2. On the one side, therefore, is a bold assertion that this is all nonsense, that this is Maya. But along with it, there is the most hopeful assertion that beyond Maya, there is a way out. On the other hand, practical men tell us, don't bother your heads about such nonsense as religion and metaphysics. Live here. This is a very bad world indeed, and make the best out of it. Which, put in plain language, means live a hypocritical, lying life, a life of continuous fraud, covering all sores in the best way you can. Go on putting patch after patch until everything is lost and you are a mass of patchwork. This is what is called practical life. Those that are satisfied with this patchwork will never come to religion. Religion begins with a tremendous dissatisfaction with the present state of things, with our lives, and a hatred, an intense hatred for this patching up of life, an unbound disgust for fraud and lies. He alone can be religious who dares to say, as the mighty Buddha once said under the Bo tree, when this idea of practicality appeared before him, and he saw that it was nonsense and yet could not find a way out. When the temptation came to him to give up his search after the truth, to go back to the world and live the old life of fraud, calling things by wrong names, telling lies to oneself and to everybody, he, the giant, conquered it and said, death is better than vegetating ignorant life. It is better to die on the battlefield than to live a life of defeat. This is the basis of religion. When a man takes this stand, he is on his way to find the truth. He is on his way to find God. That determination must be the first impulse towards becoming religious. I will hew out a way for myself. I will know the truth or give up my life in the attempt. For on this side, it is nothing, it is gone, it is vanishing every day. The beautiful, hopeful young person of today is the veteran of tomorrow. Hopes and joys and pleasures will die like blossoms with tomorrow's frost. That is one side. On the other, there is the great charms of conquest, victories over all the ills of life, victory over life itself, the conquest of the universe. On that side, men can stand. Those who dare, therefore, to struggle for victory, for truth, for religion, are in the right way. And that is why the Vedas preach, be not in despair. The way is very difficult, like walking on the edge of a razor, yet despair not. Arise, awake, and find the ideal, the goal. Now, all these various manifestations of religion, in whatever shape and form they have come to mankind, have this one common central basis. It is the preaching of freedom, the way out of this world. They never come to reconcile the world and religion, but to cut the Gordian knot, to establish religion in its own ideal and not to compromise with the world. That is why every religion preaches, and the duty of the Vedanta is to harmonize all these aspirations, to make manifest the common ground between all these religions of the world, the highest as well as the lowest. What we call the most errant superstition and the highest philosophy really have a common aim in that they both try to show the way out of the same difficulty, and in most cases this way through the help of someone who is not himself bound by the laws of nature in one word, someone who is free. In spite of all the difficulties and differences of opinion, about the nature of the one free agent, whether he is a personal god or a sentient being like a man, whether masculine, feminine, or neuter, and the discussions have been endless. The fundamental idea is the same. In spite of the almost hopeless contradictions of the different systems, we find the golden thread of unity running through them all. And in this philosophy, this golden thread has been traced, revealed little by little to our view. And the first step to this revelation is the common ground that all are advancing towards freedom. One curious fact presents in the midst of our joys and sorrows, difficulties and struggles, is that we are surely journeying towards freedom. The question was practically this: what is this universe? From what does it arise? Into what does it go? And the answer was: in freedom it rises, in freedom it rests, and into freedom it melts away. The idea of freedom you cannot relinquish. Your actions, your very lives will be lost without it. Every moment, nature is proving to us that we are slaves and not free. Yet simultaneously rises another idea that we are free. At every step, we are knocked down, as it were by Maya, and shown that we are bound, and yet at the same moment, together with this blow, altogether with this feeling that we are bound, comes another feeling that we are free. Some inner voice tells us that we are free. But if we attempt to realize that freedom, to make it manifest, we find the difficulties almost insuperable. Yet, in spite of that, it insists on asserting itself. Inwardly, I am free, I am free. And if you study all the various religions of the world, you will find this idea expressed. Not only religion. You must not take this word in its narrow sense, but the whole life of society is the assertion of that one principle of freedom. All movements are the assertion of that one freedom. That voice has been heard by everyone, whether he knows it or not. That voice which declares, "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden." It may not be in the same language or in the same form of speech, but in some form or the other, that voice calling for freedom has been with us. Yet, we are born here on account of that voice. Every one of our movements is for that. We are all rushing towards freedom. We are all following that voice, whether we know it or not, as the children of the village were attracted by the music of the flute player. So we are all following the music of the voice without knowing it. We are ethical when we follow that voice. Not only the human soul, but all creatures from the lowest to the highest have heard the voice and are rushing towards it. And in the struggle are either combining with each other or pushing each other out of the way. Thus comes competition, joy, struggle, life, pleasure and death. And the whole universe is nothing but the result of this mad struggle to reach voice. This is the manifestation of nature. What happens then? The scene begins to shift. As soon as you know the voice and understand what it is, the whole scene changes. The same world, which was the ghastly battlefield of Maya, is now changed into something good and beautiful. We no longer curse nature, nor say that the world is horrible and that it is all vain. We need no longer weep and wail. As soon as we understand the voice, we see The reassert why this struggle should be here, this fight, this competition, this difficulty, this cruelty, these little pleasures and joys. We see that they are in the nature of things, because without them there would be no going towards the voice, to attain which we are destined, whether we know it or not. All human life, all nature, therefore, is struggling to attain freedom. The sun is moving towards the goal. So is the earth encircling round the sun. So is the moon encircling round the earth. To that goal, the planet is moving and the air is blowing. Everything is struggling towards that. The saint is going towards that voice. He cannot help it. It is no glory to him. So is the sinner. The charitable man is going straight towards that voice and cannot be hindered. The miser is also going towards the same destination. The greatest worker of good hears the same voice within and he cannot resist it. He must go towards the voice. So with the most errant idler. One stumbles more than another, and him who stumbles more we call bad, him who stumbles less we call good. Good and bad are never two different things. They are one and the same. The difference is not of kind, but of degree. Now, if the manifestation of this power of freedom is really governing the whole universe, applying that to religion, our special study, we find this idea has been the one assertion throughout. Take the lowest form of religion where there is the worship of the departed ancestors or certain powerful and cruel gods. What is the prominent idea about the gods or departed ancestors? That they are superior to nature, not bound by its restrictions. The worshipper has no doubt very limited ideas of nature. He himself cannot pass through a wall, nor fly up into the skies. But the gods whom he worships can do these things. What is meant by that philosophically? That the assertion of freedom is there. That the gods whom he worships are superior to nature as he knows it. So with those who worship still higher things, as the idea of nature expands, the idea of the soul which is superior to nature also expands until we come to what we call monotheism, which holds that there is Maya, nature, and that there is some being who is the ruler of this Maya. Here Vedanta begins, where these monotheistic ideas first appear. But the Vedanta philosophy wants further explanation. This explanation that there is a being beyond all these manifestations of Maya who is superior to and independent of Maya and who is attracting us towards himself and that we are all going towards him is very good, says the Vedanta. But yet the perception is not clear. The vision is dim and hazy, although it does not directly contradict reason. Just as in your hymn it is said, "Nearer my God to thee," the same hymn would be very good to the Vedantin, only he would change a word and make it, "Nearer my God to me." The idea that the goal is far off, far beyond nature, attracting us all towards it, has to be brought nearer and nearer without degrading or degenerating it. The God of heaven becomes the God in nature, and the God in nature becomes the God who is nature, and the God who is nature becomes the God within this temple of the body, and the God dwelling in the temple of the body, at last becomes the temple itself, becomes the soul and man, and there it reaches the last words it can teach. He whom the sages have been seeking in all these places is in our hearts. The voice that you have heard was right, says the Vedanta, but the direction you gave to the voice was wrong. That ideal of freedom that you perceived was correct, but you projected it outside yourself, and that was your mistake. Bring it nearer and nearer until you find that it was all the time within you. It was a self of your own self. That freedom was your own nature, and this Maya never bound you. Nature never has power over you. Like a frightened child, you were dreaming that it was throttling you. And the release from this fear is the goal. Not only to see it intellectually, but to perceive it, actualize it, much more definitely than we perceive this world. Then we shall know that we are free. Then and then alone will all difficulties vanish. Then will all the perplexities of the heart be smoothened away, all the crookedness made straight. Then will vanish the delusions of manifoldness and nature. In Maya, instead of being a horrible, hopeless dream, as it is now, will become beautiful, and this earth, instead of being a prison house, will become our playground. And even dangers and difficulties, even all sufferings, will become defeat and show us their real nature, will show us that behind everything, as the substance of everything, He is standing, and that He is the one real self.